Hi all you wonderful people out there, welcome to Scuba Diver Magazine and welcome to Ask Mark, where I do my best to answer all of your scuba diving questions and kind of recommend you the best course of action. I'm Mark, a former dive instructor. I've spent a good 10 years in the industry, just learning a little bit about a lot of things. In this week's episode, we're talking about dry glove systems and how to equalize them, subscriptions on YouTube and more social media platforms, the Dive Master course, as well as dive computer recommendations for beginners, different types of mask lenses, as well as back plates and lead weight belts. Let's dive straight into the first question, which this week comes from Dive with Matt, and they say, congratulations Mark. I've got an Ask Mark question, if I may. Of course you may. I recently bought a made to measure dry suit and it comes with the KUBI dry glove system. The question I have is, how do I go about equalizing the gloves, as I haven't been told? Could you do a demo possibly, or an explanation video on how to do it? Yes, I certainly can. So yeah, when you've got a dry glove system, you effectively have one ring that's attached, for people who don't know, you basically have a dry glove ring that's attached onto your dry suit sleeve, and then a second ring that's attached onto a dry glove, and then you connect the two, which basically means that your hand is dry, which is great because air is a more efficient insulator to keep your hands nice and warm, and it's a little bit thinner than a neoprene wet glove, so you have better dexterity, but you have a completely isolated, sealed airspace, which, as you remember from your foundational course, as soon as you go deep down, as the pressure increases, that air volume is going to shrink down and your glove sort of vacuum seals your hand in position. What you need to do, I have an old broken cuff seal here, is you put your dry suit on as you would normally, and then with a lot of dry glove systems, possibly not the KUBI, I don't think the KUBI actually comes with one, it might do though, is you get something like this, which is a silicone capillary tube, just a small tube with a little hole in it, and you could use like a piece of string basically, or like paracord or something. Some divers actually use the thumb loop from their dry suit undersuit when they're putting it on to stop it from riding up. They just leave that in place, and this basically tucks in underneath your cuff seal. So before you put the dry gloves on, you install this. And that little tube, you just have a little bit, you can put it on the top or the bottom, it doesn't really matter where it is, as long as it breaks your cuff seal just a little bit, and that's going to allow some air to travel from your dry suit sleeve into the glove. And yeah, all you need to do is just lift your hand up when you feel a squeeze a bit too much, and that just allows some gas to travel up into that separate airspace. Downside to this is obviously you're breaking that cuff seal a little bit. That's why you only use like a small capillary tube or something, so that if you do ever rip or damage the glove, or the actual ring system leaks, some water is going to find its way up into your sleeve. That's what your dry suit undersuit is there to do. They're very efficient at keeping you warm even when wet nowadays. But yeah, that's basically it. You just need to break that cuff seal a little bit, either with a small capillary tube, or yeah, a piece of string, or yeah, the thumb loop from your dry suit undersuit. I don't tend to use that just because my one's a bit uncomfortable. I've tried it before, it works, it does the job, it allows me to equalize the glove, but I just found that it dug in a bit too much, a bit too uncomfortable around my thumb. So yeah, I just use these little capillary tubes. But yeah, that's it basically. Just break that cuff seal with a piece of string or some kind of silicone tubing. 391 Wombat asks, how do we subscribe? Will our Simply Scuba subscription carry over to your new location? No, that's not quite how the YouTube subscription service works. But good news, it's completely free. There is actually a paid version, which I'll get into in a second. But yeah, if you're watching this video, if there's a little red button underneath this, click that until it turns grey, or specifically a red button that says subscribe. Click on that, and if it's grey, don't worry about it. If it says subscribed, that's perfectly fine. That's exactly what I want. There is a bell as well. The bell basically alerts you. You'll just get a little message on your phone every time I upload a video. That's completely up to you. There's also a join button, I think, next to subscribe. Join is Scuba Diving Magazine actually has a paid membership section, so it's like a secret section behind the scenes of YouTube. So you have some exclusive videos. There's only about 4, I think, nowadays. I say nowadays, since I've joined, I think there's only about 4 videos. But we are looking to make some more videos, some member exclusive ones, if you so wish. We're also looking at, of course, all the other social media channels. If you search for @Scuba Diver Mag, all one word, you should find us on like your Instagram and your Facebook. We're even starting a TikTok as well, which should be quite interesting to see what I can do with TikTok. I've never really used it before, so yeah, that could be interesting. But yeah, by all means, sort of hit that subscribe button underneath this video. But no, your Simply Scuba subscription won't carry over. It's me that's moved. It's not your subscription. Lisa Peterson asks, I'm getting ready to make the plunge and take the Dive Master class. Any tips or advice you can give me to be better prepared for the class? And also, what is the purpose of exchanging all gear in the water? Okay, so first question, getting ready for the Dive Master class is really just gaining as much experience as you can, and specifically teaching. The Dive Master is primarily a teaching role. So the more time that you can spend with an instructor, even if you're not helping out, because unqualified, you won't be so hands-on, they'll probably ask you to help like move equipment and stuff, which is completely up to you. But that sort of builds up your confidence and your library, your repertoire of how they teach and how things are done, but also seeing things. It's quite good to see like the bad things happen as such, in that you hopefully turn it into a learning experience. So that if you see something similar in the future, you can hopefully intercept it before it becomes an incident, because you start to see those like warning signs ahead of time. So the more time that you can spend in and around students specifically, and just the dive equipment, the water, all that kind of things, and the dive center. If someone's like pulling apart the compressor or a set of regulators, it's quite good for you to like, not stand over their shoulder, but just say, oh, hey, can I sort of see? And yeah, they can talk you through it. And that way you just better your knowledge on how things work. And it's like, oh, well, this is the piston. And when they talk about piston versus diaphragm and all that, that's what it does. So that you can see on the inside, you can better understand the equipment and how things are done. And yeah, just spend as much time in the water to gain your confidence in yourself, your skills, and your equipment as well. When you actually go to do the course, if you're demonstrating skills, do things as slowly and as elaborate as possible. If you're doing like mask removal, then you really want to like emphasize you're lifting the bottom away and you're blowing bubbles and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, try and really ham it up, basically have fun with it and be really expressive when it comes to things, and just generally be as sort of positive and helpful as possible. Equipment exchange in the water, that's mainly down to planning, confidence, and just like, yeah, preparation basically, because unless you're both wearing the exact same like school equipment, then it's kind of boring. If you're wearing your own personal gear, that's where it gets quite interesting, because some divers will dive with like a weight integrated BCD. The other one might be wearing a weight belt. You need to consider the buoyancy shifts when you're changing that, because if you're in a weight integrated BCD and you're wearing like a 5mm wetsuit, you take the BCD off, the BCD is now very heavy, whereas you are very buoyant. So you need to consider those buoyancy shifts, and then they have to take their weight belt off, and you have to sort of basically make it so that you both have enough negative buoyancy to actually stay down. So all these kind of things. And it's just good to get used to just different types of equipment basically, and being without that BCD that you perfectly set up in the water, on the surface, you're getting used to, okay, I'm out of my BCD, I'm into just a BCD, it doesn't quite fit me properly, but hey, and the inflator's slightly different. Okay, well that's obviously going to be the inflator, as long as you know which button should be the inflator, because it is actually fairly universal, but they're all ever so slightly different. So yeah, it's all about gaining confidence and yeah, just preparation. They normally give you a few minutes beforehand to chat to one another and figure out a plan of attack. Try and stick to that and use it to really go through all of their equipment and yeah, just sort of make sure it's all kosher and whatnot. So yeah, just confidence and planning is what Equipment Exchange is mainly all about. Peter Panci says, hey buddy, I'm new to scuba diving. I just got my open water with BSAC and I have to start to buy my first dive computer. Any recommendations? Many thanks. Yeah, wow, you're just starting out. The good news is you can't really lose at this point, because pretty much any dive computer, from like budget dive computers, I mean, I would recommend stay away from anything from like wish.com or anything. I wouldn't personally buy a wish.com dive computer or whatever, but from the main like reputable brands, they do some pretty good budget dive computers nowadays. The real top end ones, some of them can be a bit daunting because they do have a lot of features, and some features that you probably never use, but it's really down to, yeah, who you're diving with, what you're planning to do. If you're planning on going down the technical route, then I would advise at least thinking and considering about a more technical dive computer that does have some simple features, because even like a Shearwater Perdix or something, you can still use that at like open water level, because it still does air and whatnot. It takes a bit more, it's not quite as user friendly if you don't know what you're doing with dive computers, but if you can figure it out and then progress on, then it's perfectly fine. The good news is though, if you do go for a really basic dive computer, something like a Sunto Zoop Novo or a Aqualung i100 or something, most of those actually have a gauge mode that you will use in like pretty advanced diving, especially with rebreathers, because you just change to gauge mode and you can still continue to use it as a redundant backup. Most people online tend to recommend the Shearwater Peregrine. The Peregrine is a slightly more simplified version of the Perdix. Shearwater, a lot of divers out there love the Shearwater, just brands in general. The Peregrine is a color screen, pretty large dive screen. So diving here in the UK, that's quite easy to read. It's got a rechargeable battery inside of it. You recharge it with a USB cable, so that's great if you're traveling. You have the same USB charger as your phone and your tablet or whatever you bring with you, and you can just top it up. You don't need to swap any batteries or anything halfway through the trip. And yeah, it's aimed more for the entry-level diver, so it doesn't have all of the complicated like Trimix things and settings that you're never going to use. But yeah, the world really is your oyster. Have a chat with your dive club, the BSAC club that you're diving with. See what dive computers they're diving with, and try and find out their the algorithm that they're diving with. It's probably going to be a Buhlmann or an RGBM if it's a Sunto. They're the two most common. You do find Z Plus as well, and some DSATs probably still knocking around, but see if you can go down a similar algorithm route as your buddy, because if your buddy is diving an RGBM and you're diving a Buhlmann, then you'll probably have slightly different like decompression obligations or something, or different dive profiles, but yeah, they're all pretty good nowadays. Just have a look around. I would recommend looking at that Shearwater. That is very nice if you're looking for something that you're going to wear like day to day as well. Those new Garmin, the Descents, you either have the G1, which has a G1 Solar. That's very, very nice. But the Mark II as well, color screen, watch sized. That's got everything from like heart rate monitor and all bells and whistles and things, and GPS and clever compass things in it. But yeah, there's plenty out there. I'd start your journey looking at a Shearwater Peregrine though. STE says, could you explain current masks, i.e. UV lenses, etc.? What mask and lens would you recommend? Also a good dive torch, a dsmb, and all essential travel gear. Okay, so mask lenses. You probably got about 7 different mask lens options nowadays. Fourth Element jumped in at the beginning of the year, and when they introduced their Scout mask that has 4 different lens options. Most standard masks, they have a tempered glass lens. You do get some cheaper ones with, I mean, some real cheap masks with like plastic polymer lenses. Not so great. They're okay for like swimming, but scuba diving, you want tempered glass. They're perfectly fine. The downside to them, or the only downside to them, is that it's the same type of glass that you get in like glass tables. And if you're going around like a furniture store and you see that that blue tint, that bluish green tint on the edge of a glass table, those are the imperfections. I think it's like iron in the glass, and that does have an ever so slight effect on what you actually see through them. You then get optical grade glass, which doesn't have that bluish tint. So like on my what's it called, Atomic Aquatics Venom frameless mask, optical grade glass. So if you looked at the edge of that, it's completely colorless because it's had those impurities removed out of it. Just allows for slightly better transmission of light. So you're seeing more truer colors when you're in the water. Not to say that when you're wearing a standard tempered glass lens that all you see is these impurities or something. That isn't the case, but it's just that little bit better. The UV cut lenses, this is where we're starting to cut out certain wavelengths of light, because you get infrared and ultraviolet, and either end it can be quite dangerous, or especially the ultraviolet range, that HEV, that like 420 range of wavelengths. They can be quite damaging to your eyes. So UV cut lenses will cut out certain wavelengths of light. These are particularly good if you're diving in the tropics a lot. They're basically sunglasses for your eyes. And yeah, they're basically there just to protect. They're not, because a lot of it is invisible light, you don't really see it. It's not like putting sunglasses on when you're in the water. It's cutting out things that you don't normally see, so you shouldn't notice too much of a difference sort of actually during the dive, but they are in the background just helping to protect your eyes. With Fourth Element, they introduced shield, contrast, clarity, and can't remember the last one. I forget what that one's called, but shield is the UV cut. Clarity is that optical grade glass, and contrast cuts out the green wavelengths of light. So instead of cutting out the UV light, contrast cuts out some of the green wavelengths of light. So it's particularly useful if you dive in greener waters, if you're diving in fresh waters or around here in the UK and you have those greener waters because of the algae. It helps to just filter out some of the green light. You can still see the color green, but it filters out some of those wavelengths, and it just helps to boost the contrast, so things pop out a little bit better. The fourth one, which I can't remember the name of off the top of my head, that's better for bluer waters. So instead of cutting out those green wavelengths, it cuts out blue, or some blues, and again it helps with the clarity, but more for when you're diving in bluer waters. So it really comes down to where you're diving. If you're diving just here in the UK, then yes, those that green wavelength, the contrast lens would be good. If you're diving a lot in the tropics, then a UV cut is quite good. If you're into your photography, then I'd go down more the clarity, that optical grade glass. Otherwise, you can't go far wrong with just a standard tempered glass lens. They work perfectly fine, but if it's not too much to upgrade to optical grade glass, it is just that little bit nicer. Just do be sure that when you're preparing your mask, that you're not going to damage those lens treatments. There are a few others. You get mirrored. Some mirrored helps to, it's a lot like UV, it cuts out certain wavelengths. I'm not a huge fan of them because you can't see the diver's eyes. It's quite nice to be able to see their eyes and how they're reacting. You can get some tinted lenses. Don't see them too much anymore. I think that's more of a 2000 thing. They seem to have died out. They're usually just literally rose tinted lenses, and it would just turn everything pink until you get down to about 5+ meters. Then it starts to bring the reds back out, but yeah, they're not too popular anymore. You don't see them. But nowadays, yeah, UV if you're diving somewhere nice and sunny, or yeah, maybe something like contrast if you're diving somewhere green, but I personally use optical grade glass. And also a good travel torch, a dsmb, and all around essential travel gear. Travel torch, the Mars EOS range are really good nowadays. Not to say that they were bad at some stage, but as far as torches, you're getting a lot of bang for your buck because they have 4. I mean, I think they actually have about 7 or 8 different torches, but in their like prime EOS range, they've got like I want to say a 5, an 11, 20 and a 32, something like that. The numbers change each year, so my little brain gets frazzled. But if you get something around 1000 lumens, that's my usual go-to, especially for like just a night dive in clear blue waters. I tend to dive with my my Simply Scuba Mark 1 dive torch just because it's nice and compact and rechargeable. But you get the same thing in the Mars range. They're all rechargeable batteries. You don't have to take the batteries out. You just plug it into a USB charger, and with that, with the Mars EOS range, you can adjust the beam angle between a tight spotlight and a wide floodlight. So if you want to illuminate everything and really see where you're going, you've got the floodlight. But if you then want to focus on one thing in particular, you just screw the head in a little bit and it zooms in, and it's got this tight spotlight, and you can adjust the power settings and all that. So yeah, check out the Mars EOS LRZ range. DSMBs, you do get travel specific DSMBs. So you can see which of these has seen the sun more sun. So the main difference between these two, other than the obvious size, is that this one has seams on both sides, whereas this one has seams on one side. That helps to make it a bit more compact. It does mean that this edge does wear a little bit faster, so do be careful of that. But I think these are both the same length. It's just this one is more designed for travel. It's just more compact, but it's big enough. I think it's about 1 meter long. I think this one's also about 1 meter long. So yeah, perfectly fine as far as sort of being seen in the water, but to actually stow it away in a pocket or just clipped off to a D-ring, yeah, I think this one's made by Hollis, but there are plenty out there. And yeah, for clear blue waters, unless you've suddenly got this huge amount of waves coming out, then that's perfectly fine. So just look for like 1 meter long. Anything bigger is better, but yeah, it's perfectly fine. And essential travel gear. Dry bags. Dry bags are really useful. I keep a Mares, no, not Mares, a Fourth Element, one of their light 5 litre dry bags with me wherever I go. Always useful just to keep things inside, because I mean, you try and bring like all those like multi-tools and things, unless they're in a dry bag or a dry box, they just rust like that. So yeah, try and keep things contained inside, and it's good to organize your equipment with dry bags. Towels are quite useful. Water bottle, because otherwise you have to use another plastic water bottle out there. Those I don't think I've got one down here, but you know those S clips, they got like 2 wire gates. They're really useful because you can clip it onto like a railing and then attach your towel or something, so it can air dry. But yeah, dry bags would be my sort of first recommendation on go-to for essential travel gear. Lee Houston says, hi Mark, I've recently moved from a standard BCD to a backplate and wing. However, I'm finding it a bit of a faff when used in conjunction with my weight belts. If the weights are too far back, then the backplate doesn't sit flush on my back, and too far forwards and it's uncomfortable on the hips, etc. Any tips to make it more comfortable or efficient tar? Yeah, so your first option, which by the sounds of it you've already tried, is to move the lead a bit far forwards or a bit further forwards. But if it's sitting on your hips and it's uncomfortable, then you've already tried that. Then my next one would probably be like integrated weight pouches. Most manufacturers nowadays do some kind of integrated weight system, so you can put them a bit further forwards. Another option which you might not know about is a P weight. So so you have your back plate, and then down the spine you can get a P weight or a V weight. A V weight is more similar to this. So that goes between or behind the back plate, between your twin cylinders, and the twinning bolts just go through there, and that sandwiches it. But if you're diving on singles, can't really use that. So I'd look at P weights. P weights, yeah, they just sit in that little channel, and they're out of the way. They're obviously not ditchable because they're bolted on. Usually the bolts go straight through the lead to hold it in position, but it keeps it a little bit higher. So if you already struggle to keep your shoulders down, it acts like trim weights and helps to keep you a bit more horizontal. It's nice and close to your body, because the further away the lead is from your body, the more likely it is to tip you over. But when it's nice and close, it's nice and trim, so it moves with you. And then you can just have like 2 or 4 or something kilos on your weight belt. Not a ton of lead, but just enough to help you get positive buoyancy, so you can ditch that lead, but this is still there, so you don't just rocket up to the surface. So that would probably be my best recommendation. Otherwise, yeah, look at integrated weight pocket systems. There are plenty out there from X-Deep and Mars XR and Scuba Pro S-Tech, I think they called it. And they basically attach onto the sides of your back plates, and then they attach to your waistbands, just like a more traditional recreational BCD. That's kind of it. You can get some trim weight pockets or pouches that attach to the back of your back plate as well. You can get, oh, what were they called? Dripstone. Dripstone was quite a clever system in that it allowed you to attach a block of lead almost anywhere on 2-inch webbing straps, but very quickly without having to thread and unthread. You can obviously thread weight blocks onto any 2-inch webbing strap, whether it's your cam band or the actual strap. Makes it less quick release, but say I wanted to add some trim weight somewhere to this, I'd have to unthread all of this, thread the lead on, and then thread it back on, which just makes it a bit of a pain. But with something like, I think it was called Dripstone. I want to say Dripstone. It was like a plate with 2 sections of bungee. You put the lead over the top, and then the bungee would like thread over the top of it, so that it held it in position, but it was still pretty quick to attach and move. Those are probably your best options. But yeah, have a look at P weights, and that way you can add a little bit of extra lead to your back plate and take a bit off of your weight belt. It's great to get back into the swing of things and answer your questions again. It's been, what, a month or so since I've done a Q&A with you guys and girls. So yeah, I quite enjoy sort of this side of the YouTube channel, answering your wonderful questions. You can tell that it's been a while since I've done it, because the first time I actually ran through this, I didn't actually plug in my microphone, so you wouldn't be able to hear me. But anyway, if you have any questions or any further advice for these divers, then by all means let us know down in the comments below. And if you want me to spend some time just answering your question or just discussing a certain topic, then add the Ask Mark hashtag to your comment in the comments below. Remember to head over to scubadivingmagazine.com to stay up to date with all things scuba diving, with the latest news as well as scuba diving destination advice and equipment reviews as well. And of course, like and subscribe here and all of your favorite social media channels to stay up to date with scuba diving. That's it for another week. Thank you for watching, everybody, and of course, safe diving.